You're holding on to that you think isn't affecting anybody else. In other words, what are you holding on to? Is there something you're holding on to right now that you think only affects you? And you know it's wrong, and you know that it doesn't please God, but nobody else knows. Maybe it's something like a private compromise you've gotten comfortable with. Maybe it's a hidden purchase or a hidden account, a hidden habit, and you've already decided this is just my thing. Maybe it's not even that dramatic. It's just a pattern. It's a resentment. It's a way of thinking that you know doesn't line up with who God's calling you to be, but you've learned how to live with it. And somewhere along the way, you started telling yourself, this isn't hurting anybody. If you're there right now, or if you've ever been there, or if you're someone who's been hurt by this, the Bible has a story that drops us right into that exact moment. It takes place in the book of Joshua. And yeah, not to overcomplicate it, it's called Joshua because he's the guy in charge now. After Moses dies, Joshua steps in to lead. And here's the big picture. God has taken his children out of Egypt, out of the 400 years of slavery, and then they're 40 years in the wilderness. And there were some big moments in that wilderness, but there were also a whole lot of facepalm moments. I picture that 40 years in the wilderness being a lot like being stuck in a group text that never ends. But through all of it, 40 years, God is faithful, and Joshua, he's a man of action. He's ready to take back the promised land. And the promised land is exactly what it sounds like. God has promised all of this land all the way back to Abraham, to the Israelite people. But there's a problem. There's always a problem. While Israel was gone, other nations moved in. Basically, they saw empty land and they thought, yeah, baby, we'll take some of that. And they did. They moved in. And these are not good people. They weren't good people, not even close. They practiced stuff like child sacrifice, sacrificing some of their children in order to please or attempt to please their so-called gods. So when Israel enters the land, this isn't just random violence. This is God bringing judgment on a people who were really, really far gone. And as soon as Israel crosses the Jordan, it's on, right? We saw this last week. The first major city they face is Jericho with its huge walls, its thick fortifications. Jericho is the gateway into the land. And they march around the city, and the seventh time the walls fall. But Rahab is spared because she trusted God. But everything else in Jericho was set apart for destruction. Nothing was supposed to be taken. No one was supposed to walk away richer than they started. That's where we pick up the story today. Verse 1, but the Israelites were unfaithful in regard to the devoted things. Achan of the tribe of Judah took some of them. So the Lord's anger burned against Israel. So right away, immediately after this huge victory in Jericho, the one God himself had provided so clearly, this dude named Achan, he disobeys God. And God had been very clear, don't take anything. Everything belongs to him. And Achan looks at it and he thinks, no one's going to notice. It's just a little. Who's it going to hurt? And at first, nobody notices. They don't, because that's how it always starts. You think it's private, you think nobody knows, but sin never stays where it starts. And Achan is about to find out that what you conceal, eventually God will reveal. But for now, it looks like he got away with it, right? The people are celebrating, praising God. They're moving on to the next thing. But just because nobody else sees it doesn't mean that God doesn't. Verse 2. Now Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai and told them, go up and spy out the region. So the men went up and spied out Ai. When they returned to Joshua, they said, not all the army will have to go up against Ai. Send 2,000 or 3,000 men to take it. Do not weary the whole army, for only a few people live there. And so, right after Jericho, there's another city. There's always another city. And these people, they're just like the people of Jericho. They're just as far gone, just as far from God. But there's one major difference. This city, it looks easy to take, whereas Jericho looked impossibly hard. This one looks terribly easy. And this is the point. This is the point where everyone stops praying. Because just like when Katy High School plays Morton Ranch in football, everybody already knows who's about to win. Don't we? We know, right? And just like that, the Israelites are tailgating before the game. They got the burgers on the grill, maybe some brats. They got the cornhole games going, right? Nobody's worried. Let's see how it goes. So about 3,000 went up, but they were routed. They were defeated by the men of Ai, who killed about 36 of them. They chased the Israelites from the city gates as far as the stone quarries and struck them down on the slopes. With this, the hearts of the people melted in fear and became like water. And just like that, everything changes. Before the tailgate is even over, before the burgers are even done, right? That easy win they thought they'd get turns into a defeat. Men are dead, people they know. And why? Because what one man thought was private didn't stay private. And the whole nation is shaken because this doesn't make sense. Why? Because Jericho was harder, right? And God gave them the victory. And Ai was surely easier. And now they're running away. And the question they're asking is the same one that we would ask. Is God not with us anymore? And what they don't realize yet is that this didn't start on the battlefield. It started with one person's sin. Just one decision that one man thought only affected him. Verse 6. Then Joshua tore his clothes and fell face down to the ground before the ark of the Lord, remaining there till evening. The elders of Israel did the same and sprinkled dust on their heads. Joshua tears his clothing. He hits the floor, throws dust in the air. All the elders do the same. They're not just upset, they're shaken because something is wrong. Verse 7, and Joshua said, pardon your servant, Lord. What can I say now that Israel has been routed by its enemies? In other words, God, what just happened? We were winning, and then we were running. Verse 9, Joshua says, the Canaanites and the other people of the country will hear about this. Translation, everyone's going to find out, and when they do, they're going to be coming for us. He continues, they will surround us and wipe out our name from the earth. What then will you do for your own great name? Now it's panic. Because if this keeps happening, we're done. It's like if Morton Ranch were ever actually to beat Katy High School in football, then what's Katy going to do? What are they going to do when it's playoff time and they need to play North Shore? And here's the question. Underneath everything, Joshua is saying, God, are you still with us? But Joshua doesn't understand what's really going on, not yet. He still thinks the problem is out there when it isn't. Verse 10, the Lord said to Joshua, stand up. What are you doing on your face? In other words, hey, Josh, get up, bro. This isn't a prayer problem, it's a sin problem. And you can pray all day, which in and of itself is usually not what we want to hear. But if there's sin that has to be dealt with, that's the problem. Verse 11, God says, Israel has sinned. They have violated my covenant, which I commanded them to keep. They have taken some of the devoted things. They have stolen. They have lied. They have put them with their own possessions. God doesn't say, listen to this. God doesn't say Achan has sinned. He says Israel has sinned. You notice the difference? One person's disobedience becomes everyone's problem because sin never stays where it starts. And there it is. What Achan thought nobody would see, God did. Verse 12. God says, this is why the Israelites cannot stand against their enemies. They turn their backs and run because they have been made liable to destruction. I will not be with you anymore unless you destroy whatever among you is devoted to destruction. What's God saying? He's saying, you ain't winning anymore. You're going to lose every single battle until this is dealt with. Not because God isn't powerful, but because God holds people accountable. Verse 13. Go, consecrate the people. There are devoted things among you, Israel. You cannot stand against your enemies until you remove them. In other words, deal with it. Don't ignore it. Don't hide it. Don't pretend it isn't there. And you kind of can feel this, right? The axe hasn't fallen yet, but it's coming. Tomorrow, everything's going to be exposed. And before we move on, don't keep this at arm's length. Because here's the truth. We all have moments where we think this isn't a big deal. Nobody's going to notice. This only affects me. But it doesn't. It doesn't stay contained. It affects the people around us. It affects our spouse. It affects our kids. It affects our extended family, our team. It affects our church. And more than that, God knows. And he doesn't ignore it. See, Achan took what belonged to God and he hid it. He lied about it. He buried it, and people died. And now, the moment he thought would never come is here. Early the next morning, Joshua had Israel come forward by tribes, and Judah was chosen. The clans of Judah came forward, and the Zerahites were chosen. He had the clan of the Zerahites come forward by families, and Zimri was chosen. Joshua had his family come forward man by man, and Achan, son of Carmi, son of Zimri, son of Zerah, of the tribe of Judah, was chosen. And what we see here is this. God already knows exactly who did it, but he doesn't expose it all at once. He narrows it down, step by step. I think there's a reason for that. But this would be kind of like trying to find one single person in all of the United States, right? You start with all 50 states and you narrow it down to Texas. And then all the cities in Texas and you narrow it down to Katy or Greater Katy, right? And then maybe Cinco Ranch High School, right? And then 12th grade boys, right? And then last name starting with R. This is how it feels, right? One by one, until there's nowhere left to hide. And as this keeps narrowing, Achan knows. He knows it's only a matter of time. Verse 19, then Joshua said to Achan, my son, give glory to the Lord, the God of Israel, and honor him. Tell me what you've done. Do not hide it from me. And don't miss that first phrase, my son. This isn't just some random guy. It's one of their own. And Joshua's not yelling. He's not mocking Achan. There's weight here. There's grief here. Because he knows what's coming. And he still says, give glory to God. In other words, how you respond right now, it still matters. You've already sinned, but what you do next matters. So don't hide it, don't spin it, don't minimize it. Say it. All of it. Because the only thing worse than sin at this point would be to keep hiding it. Verse 20. Achan replied, it is true. I've sinned against the Lord, the God of Israel. This is what I have done. When I saw the plunder, in the plunder a beautiful robe from Babylonia, 200 shekels of silver, and a bar of gold weighing 50 shekels, I coveted them and took them. They're hidden in the ground inside my tent with the silver underneath. Achan's been found out, and only now does he tell the truth. He lays it all out, says, I took it, I hid it, here's where it is, and don't miss how it happened. I saw, I wanted, I took, and I hid. That's the pattern. And that's not just Achan. It's us. We see something we shouldn't. We start wanting it. We justify it. We take it. And then we try to hide it. Same pattern, different details. And every time we tell ourselves that same lie, this stays with me. And I'll tell you something that I've learned about myself. The longer I avoid dealing with something, the more normal it starts to feel. You tell yourself you'll deal with it tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes next month. And before long, you're not even fighting it anymore. You're just managing it. You're living with it. You're working around it and hoping nobody notices. And here's the thing, nothing starts changing until we get honest. Nothing gets better until you stop hiding it. Achan finally tells the truth, but it's after the damage is already done. Verse 22, so Joshua sent messengers, and they ran to the tent, and there it was, hidden in the tent with the silver underneath. They took the things from the tent, brought them to Joshua and all the Israelites, and spread them out before the Lord. So Joshua sends men to the tent, and it's exactly the way that he said. It's all just sitting there, the gold, the silver, the robe, hidden. Just like he said, but it isn't anymore. Because what you bury doesn't stay buried. Now it's all out in the open for everyone to see. And at this point, everyone knows what's coming, because this sin that Achan thought was only his, it wasn't. It cost lives. There are now widows in Israel missing their husbands. There are little children crying out for their daddy. All because of one decision, something that was supposed to stay hidden, didn't. And now the whole community sees it. No one can pretend it didn't happen, and now it has to be dealt with. Verse 24, then Joshua, together with all Israel, took Achan, son of Zerah, the silver, the robe, the gold bar, his sons and daughters, his cattle, donkeys, and sheep, his tent, and all that he had, to the valley of Achor. Joshua said, why have you brought this trouble on us? The Lord will bring trouble on you today. So Joshua does what he has to do. He takes Achan, everything connected to him, and he brings him out before the people. And he asks one question that really sums it all up. Why have you brought this trouble on us? Do you see what you did? This wasn't just about you. Because at this point, people are dead. And God had already said, this belongs to me. It was set apart. It was holy, and Achan took it. Then all Israel stoned him, and after they had stoned the rest, they burned them. And this is where the story goes from, hey, that's pretty interesting stuff, Greg, to, oh, wow. Really? Because if we're honest, it's a heavy ending. It shows us something that we don't always like to think about. Sin is serious. It affects people. And God doesn't just ignore it because people are dead, because he is holy. And this is not just Achan's story. It's us. Because every one of us has had moments where we thought, this isn't a big deal. No one's going to know. This only affects me. But sin, it doesn't stay private. It doesn't stay contained. It affects other people, usually the ones that you love the most. And whether anyone else sees it or not, God does. What you conceal, God will reveal. And that raises a real question. If God is that holy and sin is that serious, where does that leave us? Because if this is how sin is dealt with, we're in trouble. But the story doesn't end there. It never does. Because God wasn't finished with that valley yet. Hundreds of years later, through the prophet Hosea, God would point back to this very valley, the valley of Achor, and he would label it a door of hope, which is exactly the kind of thing that God does. He takes the places marked by failure. He takes us as people marked by failure, and he turns them into places where grace begins. And then Jesus shows up, and he makes it clear. He makes it clear that God knows everything about us, even our hearts, even the thoughts in our head. But instead of us facing the punishment that sin deserves, Jesus steps in and he takes it for us. The weight of sin, the judgment it deserves, the separation from God, he takes it so we don't have to. And what that means is this: you don't have to hide your sin. You don't have to pretend it's not there. You don't have to carry it around hoping no one finds out. This isn't about shame. It's about freedom. It's about forgiveness. You can bring it into the light and find forgiveness instead of judgment. And getting help, it's not failure. It's wisdom. Let me say something crystal clearly, because some of you need to hear this. Bringing it to God. That's where it starts. That's the most important part. That's where healing begins. That's where forgiveness happens. That's where we're transformed spiritually. But for some of you, that's not where it ends. Because there are things, there are habits, there are patterns, there are addictions, there's ways of thinking that don't just disappear. not because of God, but because we keep taking them back. We keep taking them back. That doesn't mean something's wrong with your faith. It doesn't mean you didn't mean it when you asked for forgiveness. It just means you're human and you need help. And getting help is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's saying, I'm done hiding. I'm not gonna fight this alone anymore. And you don't have to. We made some of that help really easy to find. On our website, you'll see the tab Transformation. Under that, you'll see a tab that says Support. And on there, you'll see a couple of our licensed counselors. They have trained for this. They have prepared and studied for this, but most importantly, through and through, every part of them, they love Jesus, and their whole counseling ministry is focused on him. So if that's you, don't leave here today and just hope it gets better. Don't go back to hiding. Take a step, talk to someone, let someone walk with you in it. And here's the part you don't get to avoid. You already know what it is. You already know. You've been thinking about it the whole time I've been talking. That thing you've been telling yourself, it's no big deal. This only affects me. Well, it's not staying with you. You just can't see it yet. Or maybe you can see it, and it's tearing you up, that it's affecting everyone else around you. At some point, you're gonna have to decide, do I keep hiding this or finally bring it into the light? So maybe for some of us today, the response is simple. Just quietly, right where you are, you say, God, I know exactly what Greg's been talking about. He doesn't, but I do. Father, and you do. You know. And I trust you in this hard thing that I need to do. I trust you that you love me enough to help me through this. I trust Jesus. And then finally this morning, for some of you, the step of trust today isn't about one decision, one hurt, one habit, one hang up. It's about your whole life. You've been living it on your own and you haven't trusted Jesus for forgiveness yet. There hasn't been forgiveness for anything yet. You can make that decision this morning because Jesus, he's been knocking. He's been knocking on the door of your heart. You know it. You've felt it over the last weeks, over the last month, and you've been ignoring it, putting him off, keeping at arm's length, and it's time. It's time to open that door. Isn't it about time? Just see our prayer partners in the back, and they'll point you straight to Jesus. Now, as the rest of us continue with worship.